It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. All right, I got another letter from my dear friend Mike Cohn. It's talking about something that's really interesting. Here we go. Back in 1975, Fred Brooks managed the IBM OS 360 project. This was one of the first software projects to be notoriously late. In fact, it was a year late. Brooks was asked, I suspect with shock and incredulousness, how does a project get to be a year late? Brooks replied famously, one day at a time. I believe that daily scrums help our projects from having similar fates. By meeting daily, issues are raised sooner than it would have been raised any other way. And that helps prevent the day at a time slips that led to Brooks' project being called a year late. Okay, let's pause there for a second. I love Mike, and I've been a dear friend of his for a long time. But I'm going to argue that if you wait until a daily stand up to talk about impediments, you're kind of setting yourself up for a losing battle, right? One of the things that I always teach my teams is don't wait for the daily stand up to talk about your impediments. If you know you got an impediment right now, talk about it right now. Don't just wait for the sake of waiting. I think that's silly, right? Um, the question though that he brings up is so amazing. Mike says, but do we really need to meet every day? The correct answer is, drum roll, yes, of course. Most teams do. I do believe there are two exceptions to a daily meeting. All right, here we go. The first applies only to teams that are very widely distributed across time zones. Say where it's 8 a.m. for some team members and 8 p.m. for others. You might want to hold daily scrums on Friday. You might not want to hold daily scrum on Fridays. It means some team members will have to attend on a Friday night. Uh, you know, I have a solution for that too. We'll talk about it in a second. Well, you know what? Let's talk about it now. So for me, I use in the Miroverse, they have something that you can use, and it's kind of like a Brady Bunch board, but it allows you to record your stand-up podcast or stand-up report for the day, or a Scrum, report for the day. And then what you can do is once you record yours, you can listen to everybody else's first that you haven't listened to, and then record yours, and it records over your one from yesterday. So what this does, it creates an honest way for people to track information. It allows for people who are trying to figure out what they can do to be able to figure out what they can do and what they can accomplish. But it also has a mechanism in place that if people are around the world and it's their weekend, for example, because it might be tomorrow if people are in Australia, so it gives you the opportunity to look at the green dots, listen all once to green dots, then record yours, and then tomorrow when you come in, look for the new people with green dots and listen to theirs. It gives everyone an opportunity to share information without impacting or having people up or not up at certain times of the night. The second time you may not need to have a daily scrum on a sprint is on sprint planning day. Obviously, sprint planning usually ends with some discussion that mimics the daily scrum anyway. So I agree with that. You don't want to be redundant, right? So that's another great time. Many teams believe there's a third instance where you don't need a daily scrum. When they talk a lot anyway, I got news for you. Talking frequently, even throughout a day, is not the same thing as having a daily scrum. First of all, the daily scrum may be the only time each day when everyone participates in a discussion. Most other conversations are a subset of the team or a couple of people. This is the one time you get everybody on the same page. Secondly, when a team does talk more frequently about things outside of the daily scrum will be extremely short, and it's hardly worth complaining about if it's just a short meeting. I always teach my people 30 seconds per person, not to exceed 15 minutes. And most organizations and teams get it done in 7 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes, and we're good to go. We're done. We're out. So I think that if you think about what's being proposed here, daily scrums are an important inspect and adapt activity. We must be doing them every day, right? That's why they're called daily scrums. Aside from a couple of times when skipping a daily scrum actually makes sense, holding a daily scrum every working day will help you be successful with your Agile implementation. I can tell you, when I took this class from Ken back in 2003, eh, the daily scrum was a huge topic for us. We talked about why it was so important and why it had to happen in a day and da da da. And it was just really, really interesting because we had so much going on, and I just think that more organizations here. I'll simplify this. More organizations gain value from meeting daily to talk about what's happening than they do for any other meeting. And if you can get your teams aligned in such a way that They see value and accountability instead of just being a daily status report, and that they can take care of their impediments outside of the meeting and have meaningful conversations outside of the meeting. But they still leverage this as a way to communicate. That's when you're going to have the best results. So I hope that you're doing daily scrums. I hope that you're doing them every day. Thanks again, Mike, for another awesome letter. Until next time, I encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Do take care.